Hello, Sauce here. I'm going to show you how to make a pie graph. I have numerical data. We can imagine that we asked 16 people how many hours per week they played video games. This numerical data we're going to put into categories so that we can make a pie graph from the categorical data. The categories that I'm going to choose this time is a category of 2 hours of video games or less played per week. I'm going to choose 2 more categories. I've looked at my data and I'm going to choose a category from 3 to 12. That's a moderate amount of video game playing per week. And then the third and final category will be for people who responded with 13 or more hours of game playing per week. Now that we've chosen our categories, we want to add up the number of people that responded in that category. So if I'm going to count in the category 2 or less, then the 2 and the 0 and these other zeros belong to that category, making a total of 4 responses. How many people respond in the category of 3 to 12? Let's count them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Checking the ones I have left. I've counted 7 people in that category. 13 or more hours played, the 14, the 50, the 20, another 14, and a 40. Makes a total of 5 people that responded that way. It's a good habit to check to see if we've got all of them. I've crossed them out so that I'm making a record of the ones that I've counted. And if there are 16 responses, then I should be able to add these together and get 16, and I do. How many responses that we have is important to a pie chart. In the category of 2 or less, we had 4 people, but 4 out of how many people? We can write that as a fraction, 4 over 16. 4 people responded with 2 or less out of a total of 16. And all of these responses are out of a total of 16. I can think of each one as a fraction out of 16. Now a pie chart is a circle that is divided into pieces. In math, we call the piece a sector. The pie, or the whole, is divided into sectors, and each size of each piece is going to be proportional to the fraction that represents that category. Now, the fraction 4 over 16 can be easily reduced to 1/4. So the section of the pie, or the section of the circle, that represents the category of 2 or less is going to be 1/4 of that circle. And dividing a circle into quarters is not difficult. I have a center line, and then I'm going to divide that in 2, and I'm going to make these lines bold. This is 1/4 of a circle. The inside lines make a right angle. This angle in here is 90 degrees. And this sector represents the category of 2 or less, so we'll label that. Well, how big are these other 2 categories? They're not as easy or as simple to reduce as the fraction is of 4/16 to 1/4. And if I'm going to make these sizes somewhat accurate, then I'm going to choose to think of them in degrees. I'm going to change 7/16 into degrees. To do that, it's like thinking of the fraction, the number of degrees that we have yet to calculate out of a full circle of 360. I need to know the equivalent fraction, 7/16, is equal to some number of degrees out of the full circle. This is a proportion, so we're going to do a side problem to solve for the unknown amount of degrees. And as a side problem, it means that I'm going to convert 7/16 into an unknown number of degrees, and that unknown will give a variable x. And I have to solve for x to know the size of that piece of the pie. Okay? I'm going to solve for x by using the strategy of multiplying both sides by 360 to get it by itself. If I multiply both sides by 360, it undoes the division by 360. What I do to one side, I must do to the other. I will get x by itself on the right side, and I'll need a calculator to calculate 7 divided by 16 and then times 360. The calculator tells me that x is equal to 157.5. This is a number of degrees. It is the size of the sector that is in the category of 3 to 12. Now, if I'm going to make this sector on my pie chart, a protractor will help. If you don't have a protractor, you can approximate the size of these angles, but then label the exact angle measure in your pie chart. So I've got a protractor, and I'm going to try to find the angle that is approximately 157.5 degrees. I'm reading 0 off of this line, and I swing out to about here. I can't draw the line through the plastic, but I visualized it and saw that it lied about there. This angle is precisely 157.5 degrees, and we're going to label this sector the category 3 to 12 hours of video games played per week. Now, because we only have 3 categories, and I've already found 2 of them, then the third category, 13 or more, must be the rest of this circle. To be precise, I have to find out the degree measure of this, and I can find that out a little more simply than solving a proportion, because I know a full circle is 360 degrees, and I already know 2 angles inside of it. I can find the third by starting with the full circle, 360, subtracting 90 degrees for that angle, and then subtracting 157.5 for my second, which leaves a measure of 112.5 for the last angle.